Hi guys, welcome back to the Wargamer and another X-Wing unboxing. This time I'm going to be looking at the M12L Kimogila Fighter. Now this is a scum and villainy ship, as you can see by the symbol here. And in this video I'm going to be looking at the contents of this box, the ship, the tokens and all the cards, and also discussing some of the tactics you can use on the ship as well. So let's get this box opened and take a look inside. So here we have all the tokens that we get in this set. Now first of all we have the movement dial at the top here. Now instead of spinning this around so we can see all the maneuvers here, I'm just going to get the reference sheet that comes in the set, and you can see all the maneuvers are visible here. Now the ship itself isn't very agile, it's not very good at doing these tight turns. You can see these 90-degree turns all incur stress tokens, and it's not particularly fast. The only 4-speed movement that we have here is this about turn, and that's technically not going to be very useful if you want to move quickly. However, the main straightforwards do reduce stress, which is quite useful, as you'll see later on. So in terms of the other tokens that we get on here, we also get the ship bases. These are double-sided to represent each of the 4 pilots you get in this set. We also have some target lock tokens. We have 4 jam tokens, 3 stress tokens, 2 weapon disable tokens, 3 shield tokens, and also a focus and a critical hit token as well. So that's all the tokens looked at. Let's move on to looking at some of the pilot cards. Now here I have the 4 pilot cards that we get in this set. I'm going to be going through each of these in descending order, starting with the highest pilot skill that we get in here. Now this is Modification, and this particular ship here, I'm going to just discuss the ship itself before we move on to the pilot. So you can see here we've got quite a decent amount of firepower. Agility is pretty low, but we do have a decent amount of hull points and fairly mediocre shield ratings there. You can see we've got 2 shield points on each of these ships. In terms of the actual additional items that we can have down here, we've got elite torpedoes, missiles, astromech, and also illicit. And I believe that's the same for each of these ships as well. In terms of the actual actions that these ships can perform, we've got focus actions, target locks, barrel rolls, and also weapon reloads, and that's the same across each of these cards as well. So let's look at some of the special rules that each of these pilots have. So first of all, we have the Modification. So after you perform an attack, each enemy ship inside your bullseye firing arc at range 1 to 3 must choose to suffer 1 damage or remove all the focus and evade tokens. Now the bullseye firing arc that this refers to is actually explained in a separate card that we get in this set. Now this is an interesting ability that this particular ship has. It has an extra firing arc. So if I bring in one of the bases of the ships here, you can see we have the regular firing arc here, but we have this dotted line as well. This is basically a line which emits directly ahead of the ship, and if any attacks are actually caught within this particular firing arc, is a lot more narrow than the regular spread that we get on the normal firing arc, then what actually happens is that the targets that are hit by this particular firing arc from the center are unable to apply evade tokens to their defense die. So it really is a lot more brutal in its capacity to do damage, because it's going to prevent quite agile enemies that have built up some evade tokens from using them to modify defense rolls. So it's a very effective means of actually doing damage to enemy ships. Now that is actually compounded by the fact that this ship has a special rule. So basically if you are within range 1 to 3 and you're in that bullseye target, so this is after you perform the attack itself, then they have to suffer 1 damage, or they remove all the focus and evade tokens. Not only are they prevented from using the evade tokens, but they have to gamble whether or not to lose any focus and evade tokens they've built up, or take the damage. That's quite a brutal ability there, but it is balanced out by the fact that that arc is very narrow indeed. So the next pilot that we have here is Dallin Obros, and again this is a kind of another special rule that we have for this ship. At the start of your combat phase, you may acquire a target lock on an enemy ship inside your bullseye firing arc at range 1 to 3. Again, that bullseye firing arc is going to be enhanced by this particular ship's piloting ability. So you basically a free target lock if they're in there, which means you can start firing any torpedoes or missiles that you may have. Additionally, we have a Cartel Execution here, which doesn't have any special rules, and also the Cartel Brute as well. The only difference between these 2 cards are the pilot skill. This one is ranked at 5, and this one is ranked at 3, and obviously there's a points difference there as well. So that's the actual pilots themselves looked at, as well as the bullseye special rule that we have with this ship. Let's move on to some of the modifications and upgrades that we get with this set. So here we have all the modification cards that come in this set. So on the top left here, we're going to start off with this title card, and this is called Enforcer. Now this is another use of that bullseye firing arc. Not only are you going to be doing more damage in the attack phase using that firing arc and having ships lined up in there, but this also gives you some benefits in when you're defending. So basically after defending, if the attacker is inside of your bullseye firing arc, it receives 1 stress token. So you're going to be putting stress tokens, preventing your opponents from doing attacks and red maneuvers just from being in front of your ship. Next up we have some illicit upgrade cards, and we get 2 contraband cybernetics and also dead man's switch card as well. So contraband cybernetics basically allow you to discard this card, put a stress token on your ship, and that will allow you to perform red maneuvers and also actions even though you're stressed. So if you've already got a stress token, you can put another one on there, and it just means that you can actually still use actions on that phase. If you really need to, it might be worth putting extra stress tokens. Next up we have Dead Man's Switch, which is a very interesting card, and this will come to play later on when I talk about tactics for this particular ship. So when you are destroyed, each ship at range 1 suffers 1 damage. Now do note that says each ship and not each enemy ship, so be very careful if you take this card about having this ship next to your friendly ships when it does eventually die and explode. Next up we have a astromech card, and this is R5TK, and this basically allows you to acquire target locks on friendly ships and also to attack friendly ships as well. So I'm not going to touch on this too much here, but this is going to be very useful when I talk about the tactics later on as well. We have some torpedoes, notably plasma torpedoes. As with all of these kind of weapons, you have to get a target lock, discard it to use it, and then if this attack hits after dealing damage, remove 1 shield token from the defender. So very useful for reducing those shields on your opponents. Next up we have scrambler missiles. Like we get 2 of these, and these again require smart target lock in order to be able to use them. But when they hit, then each other ship at range 1 receives 1 jam token. It's a very useful way of shutting down your opponent's actions and being able to do certain attacks. And finally we have these elite cards. Now these are again the same card. Now these are Saturation, Salvo, and these are used in conjunction with these 2 missile and also torpedo cards. And again we're going to make use of this bullseye firing arc. So let's go through it. After you perform an attack with a torpedo or missile secondary weapon that does not hit, each ship at range 1 of the defender with an agility value lower than the cost of the torpedo or the missile basically gets a hit as well. So you're going to be, it's really good for taking out ships that have bunched up, that are quite low in their agility as well. So things like TIE fighters are really quite useful for taking down these rather flimsy ships that you can actually do damage to. So you basically roll an attack dice, and if you suffer any damage or critical damage, you get basically suffer damage for any hits or critical damage hits that get rolled. So really, if you combine this with these scrambler missiles, plasma torpedoes, or things like the bullseye getting to re-roll those evade tokens, you're actually going to find yourself doing a lot of damage to ships, not just the one that you're targeting, but also the ships around it as well. And this is going to come to bear when we start talking more about tactics in a moment. So that's all the cards looked at. Let's take a look at the ship itself. And here we have the Kimogila fighter. Now, I believe that's the correct way of pronouncing this particular ship, but it's a very nice looking ship indeed. It's one that's used by the Hutt cartels, and it's kind of, its crudeness is reflected in the miniature itself. Now, as with all X-Wing miniatures, it comes pre-assembled, pre-painted, so it means you can start playing with it straight out of the box. And the paint scheme itself is really nice as well. It has all those lines and panels have been picked out by some washers, and it has a nice colour scheme also. The aesthetics of the actual ship are also reflected by the rules that it has as well. Now, it's a very stocky, well-built ship, which is reflected in the fact it has 6 hull points, which for a ship of this size is quite a lot of defensive capabilities. However, it is also very bulky, it's not very lithe, which is reflected by its low agility value of 1. So it's nice to see the rules are reflecting the way the ship looks as well. So now that we've looked at the ship itself, let's talk about some tactics that you can use with the ship in the game. Now, it's very much kitted out for offense. That bullseye firing arc is really going to do some damage to anyone caught in your crosshairs. You're going to be able to remove and negate those evade tokens depending on what pilot you're using. You'll be able to put stress tokens on them, and you're going to be able to not only use it on the offense, but also on the defense if you use the Enforcer title card we looked at earlier as well. But there are a few sneaky little tactics that you can use with the ship as well. Now, this tactic is quite a sneaky one, and it's one of my favourite probably tactics to use with the ship as well. It basically involves sacrificing the Kimogila. Now, that is essentially not to be sacrificed straight away at the beginning of the game, but if once you're taking a little bit of damage, you soaked up some of those hull points and you're starting to look a little bit run down and maybe like you're not going to last until the end of the game, you can actually use the ship on the offensive. You can make use of the R5 TK and also the Dead Man Switch cards that we looked at earlier. So let's refresh. The R5 TK card allows you to target friendly ships, and that also means that you can shoot yourself. Now, if you combine that with Dead Man Switch, which basically causes you to explode and damage any ships within range 1, that if you feel like you're going to be taken out next turn, you can actually shoot yourself and start doing automatic damage to ships around you. Now, if you combine that with other weapons, such as scrambler missiles, plasma torpedoes, or even the saturation salvo as well, you can probably find that you're going to be doing some damage not just to the opponents nearby, but you're also going to be doing additional damage because of the saturation salvo and also jamming those ships as well. So you're really going to be sending this ship out in a blaze of glory. However, if you do want to go down that route of using that tactic, you're going to need to kit out your fighter in a correct way. You're going to need to take Dead Man Switch, you're going to need to take out R5 TK, and also some missiles or torpedoes as well, just to make the most of those splash damage effects that you want to take later on. So it does start putting up the price of your ship. So if you're going to be using one of these tactics, you're going to be needing to think about this as potentially going to be happening at some point in the game. Otherwise, you're going to be wasting points. So you can really take advantage of the fact that this does have a lot of hull points and use it to soak up damage that some of your weaker ships might not be able to take. So you can use some other cards which will actually cause damage to be occurred to this ship instead of other ships, and you can also try and goad your opponents into shooting at this one as well by getting it really close and maybe even getting some ships trapped in that bullseye firing arc as well. Now, one of the biggest weaknesses of this fighter is its speed and agility. It's very slow and it's not very agile at all. Now, you're going to want to really maneuver the ship around because you're going to worry about smaller ships zipping around you, getting out of the way of that bullseye firing arc, and you really want that firing arc to be locked on to your opponents. So you're going to be using things like contraband cybernetics to be able to do things like the barrel roll, even though you have stress tokens on your ship as well. And being able to do those additional actions in stress whilst your ship is stressed is going to be really, really useful when you're finding yourself getting outmaneuvered by faster, smaller ships. And so that concludes our look at the Kimogila fighter. Now, it's overall a really nice ship. I really liked some of the interesting tactics and cards that we got in this set. And if you enjoyed this video, both the discussion of the cards and also the tactics, please do let me know in the comments below. And also make sure you subscribe to be kept up to date with all of my future X-Wing videos. And if you wanted to pick up one of these Kimogila fighters for yourself, I'll include a link in the description below to take you to a store finder where you can find your nearest stockist of X-Wing. And so all I have to say is thanks for watching and goodbye.